We're off to see the wizard. The wonderful wizard of Elayne being Elayne.
Elayne. Oh, yeah. This is the beginning of the goat's milk.
Yep. This is, in fact, the introduction of the goat's milk chapter. Yes, that is the most notable thing that happens in this chapter is that goats are acquired for the palace.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
All right, well, shall we surprise some kings and queens and actually start on this chapter?
Yeah, let's surprise some queens and also some kings. Because we can't get to the cleansing unless we ruffle some nobility feathers.
Oh, just be happy they didn't find Rand quite yet.
Yeah, this is that moment where they're like, we might have to punch a very cranky man in the face and get murdered for it. And if they had found Rand, that would have happened and it would have been bad.
Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, Elayne saves the world in this chapter by diverting these folks.
By using them for her own political ambitions, she is also able to stave off an interaction with Rand that would have meant the literal end of the world. TLDR, queens are necessary to keep the world going. It appears to be RJ's thesis.
I know we had Queen Elizabeth II for a long time, but I don't know.
Oh, I do not argue that myself. I just think that's RJ's thesis.
Oh, okay.
I do not believe in monarchies. I think the entire notion is nonsense and needs to be retired.
You don't think there's a group of people who are just naturally better off at ruling and have an instinct to really take care of lesser people among them in a way that nobody else can?
Okay, well, the lesser people part is about where I lose all faith in the entire platform. And yes, as a proud American, this is the one thing I will be proud to be part of the United States about. All the rest of it I feel complicated about. The no thank you to monarchy part, very, very unequivocally proud of that part of my national heritage.
To surprise kings and queens, and our symbol is the Lion of Andor, because this is an Elayne secession chapter.
Oh yeah, she is attacking like a lioness and keeping attacking, which is not at all cat-like, but whatever. The analogy will hold. It's fine.
It's all about momentum.
Selected kind of a long read for this.
Okay, go for it.
Because we have a lot of character mood setting here. And remember, this is exactly where we left off last chapter. Exactly. Like one sentence apart from where we left off last chapter.
Which usually we try and blend those together, but both of these chapters are long enough that it sort of became daunting to try and do that.
Yeah, this is a lot of politics, but anyway, just that's why this read is going to start abruptly. That's not my fault. That's an editorial choice. It was not quite so simple as just saying she would go, of course. This is unwise, sister, Aviendha said darkly as Merilil scurried off to freshen herself. Scurried in truth. The Grey seemed to be keeping a sharp eye out for sea folk before she reached the sitting room doors. When a sister of Elayne standing said go, Merilil went. Arms folded and shawl wrapped around her so she looked very much the wise one, Aviendha stood over Elayne at her writing table. This is very unwise. Wise? Birgitte growled, feet apart and fists planted on her hips. Wise? The girl wouldn't know wise if it bit her on the nose. Why this rush? Let Merilil do what Greys do. Arrange a parley in a few days or a week. Queens hate being surprised, and kings despise it. Believe me, I know it to my cost. They find ways to make you regret it. The warder bond mirrored her anger and frustration. I want to catch them by surprise, Birgitte. It might help me to find out just how much they know about me. Grimacing, Elayne pushed away the blotted page and took another sheet from the inlaid rosewood paper box. Her weariness had vanished with Merilil's news, but writing a steady, clean hand did seem difficult. The wording needed to be just right, too. This was not to be a letter from the daughter heir of Andor, but from Elayne Trakand, Aes Sedai of the Green Aja. They had to see what she wanted them to see. Try to talk some bloody sense into her, Aviendha. Birgitte muttered. In case you don't, I'd best see if I can scrape together a suitable flaming escort. No escort, Birgitte. Except for you, and Aes Sedai and her warder. And Aviendha, of course. Elayne paused in writing to smile at her sister, who did not smile back. And I will cut it there. But it's... the character development between these three is... it's a new mode now. And this is where we're going to be for Elayne's character, or Elayne's pregnancy plot.
Oh, the Elayne, Aviendha, Birgitte triangle? Yeah.
Yeah. This dynamic is lather, rinse, repeat until Aviendha leaves, basically.
I was just thinking as you're reading that, this reminds me of the scene where Rand gets drunk with the maidens and stays up all night and parties, and then he has a huge attack. Then he goes and fight Asmodean the next day, and he's just exhausted, right? Remember how he's just been going, and then he gets drunk and hungover, and then like goes and fights on no sleep, right? Like,
yeah, he just is running on like 2 hours of sleep from a 48-hour critical period of like boss battling.
And that's kind of what I imagine Elayne is doing here, right? Is this, she's been going all day, and then she's exhausted, and then she gets news about the Boarderlanders, and then she goes that, and then at the end of the chapter, she's like, I'm exhausted. She literally passes out on her way home to the point where she has to be caught, and instead of going to bed, she stays up and does more work.
Because now there's an army on her door.
Right,
well, not on her door, but marching on her city.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's very much she finishes the chapter at the same part of the circle as she starts the chapter, but just one circle, like much more exhausted.
Right. Well, yep.
It's exhausting just to get to the end of the chapter and just like the empathetic, like I got really overloaded in college, right? And I'd have to come home and just take a nap before I could even like study because I just was so overloaded. Like I'm not a napper, but like it sounds to me like this cycle reminds me of the days that I would go to martial arts class in the evening. Instead of being able to take a nap, I would like go to martial arts class. Like, Elayne, please take a nap.
And on top of that, she's pregnant. And her body is going through all the things that happen when you become pregnant, which my understanding is it makes you quite a bit more tired.
Yeah, something to do with having a parasite growing inside of you, taking all your vital energy for itself.
And your body like rearranging itself to host the parasite.
Yeah, it's like a whole ass thing.
Yeah.
Origami on the inside.
It is a whole ass thing.
Yeah, I walked into that.
Oh, it's a big ass. It's hard not to. It's
Good Lord. So we got the chapter title right there in that first read. Queen's Hate Being Surprised. It's also funny that the chapter header for this is the Lion of Andor when she's expressly trying to pretend she's not there as the Lion of Andor. They see right through it. So right. I'm assuming that's why it's the chapter header is because they're like, so we're talking to the daughter heir right now, aren't we?
She's like, no, wink, no. Wink.
Right. She's like, I'm wearing all green and I don't have an escort. Clearly, I'm an Aes Sedai. Obviously.
Well, and then the Boarderlanders ruin it and they go, oh, so you're trying to get us to help you unite everybody. Cool. We're cool with that. And she's like, okay, thanks for saying it out loud. I mean, I was going to imply it and we were going to walk away. We're going to play a little game of houses, but you decided to just spill it out everywhere where anyone can hear. I guess that's fine. Boarderlanders.
They're Boarderlanders.
I know.
They're blunt. Yeah. Yeah.
And then again, this whole escort between, you brought it up, the dynamic between Aviendha, Elayne, and Birgitte. I mean, it's my warder and this person. And I'm like, and she calls her sister, but it's like, it feels much more like this is my emotional support. This is my
girlfriend.
Yes.
That's what it feels like.
That's what it feels like. This is
the daughter heir's consort.
Mm-hmm. She comes along the same way that Min does with Rand.
Yes, exactly. Except with way more like actual knife skills. But yes, she is there in that companion, emotional support companion that doesn't need to have any other name than person that I'm clearly emotionally leaning on.
Isn't there a point where he like walks somewhere with like Min and like one of the eyes, like Codswain or something like that, and he's just like me, my Aes Sedai, and my girlfriend.
I think it might be naive to use the Aes Sedai in that situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that moment might actually happen multiple times where it's just like he's got his emotional support men on one arm, and then whatever problem he's dealing with, whatever ruler or Aes Sedai he's managing on the other. And yeah, that's totally what Elayne's doing.
Yeah. And Elayne has this like, attack dog / powerful channeler to intimidate and rely on, right? Whereas Min, I feel like undercuts in a different way, right? Where she's smart and observing and everyone underestimates her. And meanwhile, she's like picking them apart because she's brilliant. And meanwhile, Aviendha's in there being like, I'm intimidating. I'm the black-eyed Aiel. I'm the one who's going to scare the people into not fucking with Elayne.
Yeah, she is the fuck around and find out factor.
She's the find out factor.
Elayne.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Very much so. I like that. That's a really good comparison. I also love how Elayne's like, I'm not tired. I just can't write straight. It's like, that is tired, Elayne.
That's what's happening. You're having some issues with your exhaustion. And yeah.
I mean, I get it. Like, there's a kind of focus that can come when you're exhausted and everything. But it's like, from the vantage of being in my 30s, Elayne, you're exhausted.
So there's a bunch of activity as they dress her and get her ready and, complain about the fact that she's not taking any guards, which, again, the beginning of Elayne just being absolutely irresponsible with her own safety. Like of course, you're walking into the center of 4 armies. A couple of guards aren't going to make any difference if they decide to take you hostage.
Yeah, she's going for a diplomatic mission. Yeah, there's not enough that would make a difference, but too many sets the diplomacy back. It's one of those kind of paradoxes.
We are on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan, okay? Like, so wait, no, that's missing randoms.
Yeah. Did you notice how Mellar is surprisingly amenable to staying behind?
Oh, yeah, he's got no problem going anywhere near the Boarderlanders.
But did you pick up on maybe what else he might have been doing?
No, what am I missing?
Well, there was an arson while she's gone. When she comes back, there's a water wagon running down the street to go deal with one of the arsons that usually happen at night. She's coming back in the twilight. There's already been a fire for the night. Also, that other army is coming.
Oh, you think he triggered them to show up somehow?
I had never had that thought until I was doing my notes today, but the timing is suspicious. But before I was doing this read, I mean, we know he's doing arsons. We know that he's setting arsons.
Yes, we do. Yes.
And we see evidence of arsons happening in this chapter. So.
And isn't that at the direction of Cheyenne?
Right. But I believe that Mellar is probably the actual, manager on site, so to speak.
Fair enough.
Because we know that they've teamed up at this point and that he's taking direction from her. Well, not teamed up. We know that he's been assigned to take directions from her and they've made contact. Teamed up is a bit strong.
Yeah, I just don't see Mellar having any control over Aramilla.
No, not control. Not control, but bringing that information that makes the timing particularly inconvenient.
Yeah, not buying it.
That's my, but it's definitely the fires.
Definitely the fires. Absolutely. Yeah. I think everything else is just Elayne's trying to handle a rebellion, and there's a lot going on. And sometimes things happen at the same time.
Yeah, so goat's milk. This whirlwind about guards and stuff also includes the goat's milk announcement.
Yeah, Mana Ella is, micromanaging Elayne's eating habits, right? She's like, you can't eat too little, you can't eat too much, Goldilocks, which, Elayne is basically Goldilocks.
True.
This palace is too small, that palace is too big, this palace is just right. But yeah, Elayne needs to drink goat's milk, and lots of it, right? Lots of goats for the palace.
Yeah. So, Mr. Tarfor has acquired palace goats, and they are about to make Elayne have, a permanent aversion to goat's milk. Which is a shame, because goat's milk is honestly pretty awesome.
The Dark Friend has to teach the Windfinders.
Oh, right. That is the Dark Friend. I forgot that that's the Dark Friend.
Because it was Elayne's turn, but since she's leaving, it's going to fall on her. She's the only other. And Nynaeve is gone.
Right. She won't do anything dark friendly in this instance. She'll just perform her her
She'll
face
get
roll.
bullied by the sea
Yes.
folk. Yeah.
Precisely.
Uh-huh. And then she talks to Van Dien about the Boarderlanders, because Van Dien, knows a lot about them. So it's just like the personal politics, trying to figure out like what's going on. And that comes up a bunch of times later in the chapter when she's like, Van Dien told me blah, blah, blah about this person.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Her little Google search, Wikipedia summary of Van Dien. Yeah, Elayne is all about speed, speed, speed. So we are very whirlwind. We are lots of details that don't actually matter because it's fast.
All right. I have to talk a little bit about the traveling in this chapter because it feels like Jordan forgot how it worked.
Okay.
Right? So this sentence here, Rianne had been making that weave to the stable yard every day since she first wove it to send Meryl off. She could open it to the same spot in Bram Wood with no difficulty. Where you're going shouldn't matter with traveling. All Elayne should have to have is someone to describe it to her, and she should be able to get there easily as long as she knows where she's leaving from.
Yeah, especially over such a short distance. Like, we're only talking a few hundred leagues. Like, it's not that much.
And then, at the end of the chapter, Elayne makes a gateway back from a place she doesn't know at all. Right? She gatewayed there, but then rode away, didn't learn it at all, rode back. Now, there's a little, again, I guess the retcon that solves that is the fact that, like, supposedly making a gateway to a place gives you a short jump. Remember how Rand has the I Said I Do That, where they do a short jump, and that lets them learn it, and then do the long jump. So I guess making gateway to a place lets you learn it, and then you can gateway back from that. But again, I never liked that retcon. It felt like a retcon to me.
Yeah, I've never thought about the mechanics of this that much, but I agree that you're right. It is very backwards from how it should be.
How the rules have established that gatewaying and skimming works, right? It feels like she should have skimmed there or skimmed back.
Or had someone else make the gateway for the way back. Like, that would make more sense.
Right? Because remember how in Dumai's Wells, Mahale shows up, right, and says, we could either sit here for a couple of hours under this dome while Ashaman learn the place well enough to gateway out, or we can decimate these people, right? Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
It seems like it should take a couple of hours at least, usually like an overnight stay. And embracing the source can help you do that quicker, and gatewaying to a place can help you do it quicker. But, like, Elayne doesn't really... she doesn't spend any time in that area holding the source.
Oh, I know what it is. It's because she knows where she's gatewaying to very precisely on her way back. She knows exactly where she's putting the gateway she's landing at. Like, she's gatewayed to that spot multiple times. And again, it's only a few hundred leagues away. So
skimming should be fine.
But she gateways instead.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think Jordan might have gotten himself a little topsy-turvied on that one.
I just don't think he thought through the rules.
Well, gateways, clearly he didn't think through the complete rules on. There's a lot of ways that even those of us who are not Brandon Sanderson can quickly break the rules of gateways.
Sure.
So it's entirely possible that he tripped himself up and attempted to retcon it clumsily.
It's almost like instantaneous travel somehow breaks the reality and basic function of our universe and causality.
Conservation of energy and mass. What?
Right? Well, you can have all sorts of faster than light speed effects, which like totally breaks its causality, especially local causality, right? Like it's very easy to cause paradoxes with gateways.
Yeah.
Especially if you can gateway to a great distance.
Yeah. I think we're noticing one of the more glaring thin spots in this world mechanic. Well.
What I'm headcanoning is that she gatewayed to that spot, that let her learn the spot, and that's why she was able to gateway away from it.
So Rianne didn't do the gateway. Elayne did the gateway.
Oh, fuck. Except, no, you're right. Rianne did the gateway, which totally ruins that entire... Jesus. Jordan...
Yeah.
You messed up.
Thou hast screwed the pooch.
So there's a lot here about her relationship with the sea folk, and all the various people of the palace and the various Aes Sedai and the power level comparison sort of stuff that we've heard a bunch of times before that doesn't really seem relevant until she goes through the gateway.
Yeah. Insert audiobooks sped up to like 10x.
Right.
They send Marililla ahead of them by like an hour to, create some nice diplomatic timing. Elayne decides, how to armor up, which means wearing green everything from head to toe. So we know that the show is in fact canonical in that regard.
And an Angreal.
Yes. A small Angreal, but an Angreal nonetheless.
I think Aviendha ends up with this in the last battle, is the turtle brooch.
Yes, I believe that Elayne gives it to her as her like final parting gift. It is like, I'm so sad that my girlfriend's leaving. Take a present to remember me by. And then, yeah, she wears it into the last battle, I believe.
It gets passed around quite a bit. It's one of those cool Angreals they found at Nebudar.
Right, exactly. It takes a while to find its forever home.
Mm-hmm. And I do like that they say those 10 sisters, 10 or more, with the Boarderlanders, because we know there are 13.
Yep. And they're hiding themselves. We get given all kinds of reasons to be suspicious about if the 10 is even the right number, much less what their intentions are. And yeah, Aviendha and Birgitte are still trying to talk her out of it. And Elayne's like, no, I'm super committed. This is a ridiculous argument. We should spend several more pages on it. And then we do.
And constant mentions of how she's not tired anymore because of the adrenaline. She's just, not feeling totally fresh, or just having a little trouble holding her thoughts together, or just a little trouble writing. It's just, you're exhausted, Elayne. And the shot of adrenaline is, it's keeping you going, but it's not enough.
Yeah, you are going to crash so hard.
No, but that gruel is totally giving her enough energy to keep going, right?
Oh, yeah, I know. The
fuel?
Super restrictive diet is definitely helping her energy levels. I love the little mention where Elayne suggests that Birgitte wear a sword, and it is met with as much indignation as if she had suggested it to Aviendha. Like, I love that little parallel, how Birgitte has this Aiel-like revulsion to swords for completely different reasons.
Mostly that she just always ends up dead when she uses one. Right.
It's the existential dread of the Aiel that it makes them worse than dead is very real in Birgitte's sense. It literally kills her. Mm-hmm. She literally does not survive touching a sword in a way that the Aiel just mentally feel like they don't survive.
So there's a line here where Elayne says, "Why are you suddenly treating me if I'm made of blown glass?" Which is, of course, very fragile and delicate. But as I was reading it, I read brown glass. And I spent a solid minute or two being like, why is brown glass more fragile? Is that something with the world building? Or I was literally trying to track down why brown glass? I don't understand. So yeah, and then I reread the sentence and said, oh, blown glass. That's how you make glass.
Excellent.
Yeah. Oh,
excellent.
Okay. Yeah, great. Moving on. Reading comprehension. It's important.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's an excellent moment of humor, even when you read the sentence correctly, because it's the physical comedy of her being like, "Are you treating me weird because I'm pregnant?" And then they both stare straight ahead.
No.
Do not respond.
Yes.
And then she's like, when my child is born, you can apply to be her nurse, but stop mothering me because I am a grown-ass adult. And then we get the line that is so frustrating. I understand why Jordan did it, but it will never not drive me insane. If Min had said what the gender of the baby was, it was lost in Aviendha and Birgitte's wine-hazed memories of that night. Literally, we have it on the page. It's from before they were drinking. It's literally a thing that was said before alcohol was imbibed. It should be known, but no, alcohol does not follow the rules.
That is a good point. You can have some short-term memory from before you get drugged, but yeah, memory loss. Because if you don't form the memory quick enough. But yeah, it seems like they would know that. And not to mention, Min didn't leave right away, right?
Yeah, because Min left with Rand.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
But Min says, plain as day, what is going to happen. You would think that the two women closest to Elayne would, or no, I guess she only says it to Aviendha. She only says it to Aviendha, but you would think that Aviendha would have taken note. I guess it's because she could feel Rand having sex with Elayne at the time. So she was kind of distracted.
So here's my question. What did Min say? We haven't actually said that yet.
She said Elayne will get pregnant from this. She'll have twins, a boy and a girl, born healthy and strong. And all that you remember from that is born healthy and strong.
And you're pregnant. Not twins, not boy and girl.
Not twins, not gender. Just
maybe they wanted
strong.
to surprise her a little bit and just be like, baby's healthy and strong.
Baby.
Yeah.
They said baby. They never gave her babies. I mean, she learns babies later.
Yeah.
But she learns it from the ultrasound weave, not from information given by Min. But Min gives them plain as day exactly what it is, and they're all just too distracted by the secondhand pants feelings to remember. And I get it because humans are stupid, but
Here's how I'm headcanoning this. They were distracted by the sex, and Elayne is being judgy and being like, ugh, they just got so drunk that night they can't remember. But it's really because they had, like, the sexy times going through their head that they were trying to distract themselves from. Like, Aviendha was distressed until Min said something about reminding her, right?
Yep. It's true. I wish human brains were logical and worked, like, consistently. But that's not true in real life, so why should it be true in my fantasy book?
I mean, how many times, and I think Jordan always makes a really good point of being like, people's memories are flawed, memories fade to myth, like, there's a whole theme of the book, so, like, this is on theme, certainly.
Too on theme. Too on theme. I want the prophecies to just be useful and straightforward instead of adding more confusion. But again, I want that in real life, and I don't get it, so...
And this gives us an opportunity to sort of get in her head and find out what she thinks about having children and how she wants more than one, but, you know...
How she has a political angle even to the genders of her children, because, of course, we need to have chromosomes involved in our monarchy that we absolutely need in order to keep the world together. Okay, so they ride up and they say, "We promise not to kill you." And Elayne says, "Well, that's reassuring."
the Boarderlanders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Elayne is like, "I really wish that I didn't need to be reassured that I'm not going to get killed. That is actually uncomfortable, but I'm going to put on a brave face and go strutting in there like I have not a care in the world."
And she doesn't. She's calm, right? This is she's focused, right? She's like, this is what I'm here to do. This is, like I say, when I was swimming, I always remember the anticipation was worse than that. Once you're doing something, it's easy. You just, you're in the zone. You're thinking about what you need to do next. But when you're sitting there waiting for it to start, the anticipation can get really bad.
Yeah. And she is really bringing together peak Aes Sedai and peak Daughter Heir into one highly effective, extremely dangerous combo. And this is why everyone's afraid to have an Aes Sedai as a monarch of any nation, much less a super powerful one, is because this is the kind of oomph that you can get from them.
I also want to say there's some parallels with America not wanting to have someone Catholic in the White House.
How so?
The idea that your leader is beholden to a higher authority who's another person, right? That you have an Aes Sedai who's beholden to the Amyrlin seat, or you have a Catholic who's beholden to the Pope.
That's a really relatable parallel, yeah.
And that was, ended up not being a big deal because, like, we have separation of church and state and, whatever.
We did.
Catholicism, Catholicism is no worse than any other religion to have in somebody in power.
The history of Europe does give precedence for why the Americans would be a little skeeved out.
Sure. But, I think that there's a little bit... of a parallel there, where it's like the idea that, and Jordan has said specifically the Aes Sedai represents the Catholic Church, and the Amyrlin is a parallel for the Pope. So that's I'm sort of thinking about this hesitation. I forgot our current president's Catholic. Anyway, it seems like a good parallel, and that's sort of what one of the lists of concerns is basically like, hey, we don't know if we want you as a ruler because then the Emerald Sea can pull your strings pretty hard.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. I'd only ever thought of it as like she would be such a powerful person. But you're right. Jordan very explicitly wrote that Catholic parallel in. So I think you're completely right on.
And I know we lived through the election of our first Catholic president, which was
Kennedy. Chat's saying that the first Catholic president we had was assassinated. So I'm going to go with Kennedy.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I knew that. I don't know. I think my brain has fried a little bit this week. So
yeah, I mean, that's fair. And I have never known American president history stuff very well because I've never really done civics. So yeah.
I feel like I'm just a little out of podcast practice.
Yeah, well,
so we took some breaks.
Getting back into it, but yeah, no, you're right. I mean, there was anti-Catholic sentiment in this country has a long and sordid history, ranging from being on the KKK's list of bad guys all the way up through like it being a major issue for even our most recent presidential election. Like the fact that he's Catholic, Biden has been an issue for some people. Like this is something that we have always had because, we were founded by Protestants who were protesting this thing. May have heard of it. The Catholics.
Which by the name Martin Luther. And then of course that you can go back to Luther Pendrag, right? Like there's all sorts of connections that go back.
Wow. Nice way to bring it back around.
Mm-hmm,
good.
Mm-hmm. The one who decided to split off from the continent and go out to the Sishan in the Americas.
Yeah, went and manifested some destiny.
Yep. The connections that Jordan does is really the reading Origins. I think is actually been really good for making those connections because it makes some of them much more explicit in my memory. And so I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, he really was just making this parallel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he had some very explicit, complete stories from history that he was telling through allegory. He was not just picking and choosing bits and pieces and doing a Mad Libs. He had some pretty big, broad strokes he was going for also.
So Elayne's walking through the camp. She sees soldiers who are lean but eating barley soup. But basically the soldiers who need to move soon, right? They're in the middle of winter. They're in an area. They've got some supplies, but they're consuming everything around them way too fast.
Yep. And they've got their whole army of camp followers because that's a theme that Jordan wants to hit for the next 4 books or so is that camp followers are a big deal.
Right. And that everybody is getting swept up into that, right? That this idea that you're either joining an army or you're joining a camp follower. And it's really the only place to get food in the coming end of days. And it's forcing everybody to join an army. It's essentially a draft, right? Where the alternative is to starve. Come fight the Dark One.
A lot of people are doing.
The Dragon Reborn wants you to fight the Dark One.
Ugh. I do not like the mental picture that just conjured.
Uncle Matt needs you to serve.
So then we get a fun quote from Gareth Bryn via Elayne memory, which feels very like Jordan trying to slip a little Art of War in here. Sometimes
it feels like Linny to me.
It's a bit of Linny.
Yeah.
Bit of Sun Tzu, But the quote is, sometimes you find yourself outnumbered with no path to slip away. Always do what your enemy least expects. In that case, you must attack. And then later we get more of the quote, which is, and keep attacking until they give up or you break through or something.
There's a particular note of the servant. An old cavalryman with his bowed legs and scarred face. I was trying to figure out if he was significant at all. I don't think so.
He gets mentioned a lot in this chapter for some reason, but yeah, he's never given a name or distinguishing feature to allow us to find him later. But yeah, it's weird how often he gets brought up in this chapter. Like, dude, we get it. They have an old man as a cupbearer.
Part of me wants it to be another red herring for Demandred, right? Because he's talked about his army in the south that he's got. Army of Boarderlanders, right? What if he's there influencing all the rulers, making them, and he decides to let himself in on the little meeting with Elayne?
I mean, right? Absolutely. The number of times this old man and his wine gets mentioned, you would think that something like, and then Demandred bursts out of the fireplace would happen.
Right.
Yeah, I think Jordan maybe just was sort of like leaving these little breadcrumbs around. And he's like, either the birds will eat them or it will do something interesting for me later on. Either way.
But I think it would be interesting to have Demandred in charge. You know, if you didn't have, again, the army from the other country, right, have him be in there corrupting the Boarderlanders, having all these leaders doing what he wants to do. That's why he's actually trying to find Rand, because he's actually trying to fight him, and he's got all these armies behind him, and he's going to, has fed them this false prophecy that if he doesn't know some, weird name from history, which of course he won't know, then fight them, right? And so I think it would be fun to have this whole thing set up and be propagated by Demandred, who's trying to turn the Borderlanders against Rand.
It would make so much more sense than what actually happens.
So I was just, again, just in my, I know he's obviously not this guy, but I think it would be fun if this random servant just turned out to be Demandred in disguise, in the same way that many of the Forsaken like to hide out in disguise and influence things.
It would be weird if these characters only turned into Forsaken, so there have to be lots that could.
Fair enough.
Right? Like, that's how he hides them, is he makes lots of opportunities, and you're always wondering, is this one? Is this one? Is this one? Like, I think I definitely had that experience reading the books for the first time. Like, at this point in the series, I'm learning any given servant could do something, and I'm side-eyeing all of them.
Right.
You know? So, only as spoilers people can we be like, boring.
That's true. I guess that is a good point, that what we're seeing here is all the various red herrings. Yeah. You're Lanfear. No, you're Lanfear. It turns out this guy was Lanfear in disguise. That's how you get Manfear.
All right, so
they're giving her the reception of an Aes Sedai, so they're acknowledging that she's come in not claiming to be the daughter heir, and they're saying, we're not treating you like the daughter heir, even though everybody knows she's the daughter heir.
Yep. They're all doing the dance together. We all know the choreography of what's happening. And then we get in there, and I've got some origin stuff from the names.
Okay, before you do that, there's one line here. Healing had rid Marililla's eyes of the dark circles before she left the palace. I almost feel like that's more of a wiping away of exhaustion necessarily than healing. I don't like conflating those two, because wiping away of exhaustion is not healing. It is dangerous.
Right. It's more like giving you a shot of coffee in the arm than it is actually getting a good night's rest. Mm-hmm. Using the word healing there is sloppy.
Mm-hmm. So again, I think Jordan being sloppy with some of the channeling rules that we've established so far in the series.
I wonder if in some ways the slog was written in the most of a rush. And that's part of why it's sloggy. It's because it was written in a bit of a rush.
I would actually argue the opposite, that it was written at a slower pace, but with less time put into it, right? Like, I really do think that the stories that I've heard is that after Dumai's Wells, after Lord of Chaos, his editor went to him and said, you need to slow down a little bit, and you need to stop. You're killing yourself working, 12-hour days, especially as these deadlines are coming up, and I need you to slow down. But the book still needed to come out, so I'm guessing what happened is as the book needed to come out, he just didn't go back over it as many times. He didn't didn't have a chance to really go back and tighten it up, and he just sort of was like, well, you know what, this is good enough. I don't want to kill myself. We hear stories about them in Origins getting the books to him hours, days before they're trying to print out hundreds of thousands of copies. And Jordan was a little bit sick at this point, right? He was starting to get a little sick. So,
yeah, we heard that from Jason last time we talked to him too, about the frenetic pace that this was happening at.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, it's possible that I almost feel like what we're reading is a like not the rough draft, but the like 9th draft, when normally he does 10.
Right. It doesn't feel as tight and cohesive in so many ways, and that's part of why the slog is sloggy. I feel like it could have been tight while also slowing down, but it's not. And there's just a lot going on there. So we're ragging on the books, but also we understand.
No, yeah.
There's a lot going on there. Yeah. And but the funny thing is, with washing away the exhaustion under Marilla's eyes, no matter how rested I get, I have dark circles under my eyes.
Sure.
Like, at a certain level of having no melanin, it's just all the blood shows, and like No amount of being hydrated or rested has ever made me not have bags under my eyes. It's just a thing. Like, it gets worse when I'm exhausted and dehydrated, but like, if you're a certain amount of pale, it's just sort of how life is. I wish that there was a way to fix it. But.
Yeah, and my understanding is it's just like you've got thin skin. There's a lot of details about why you get bags under your eyes. There's a physical reason why it happens when you're tired, and I remember reading a paper about that, but I can't pull up the reason.
There is one, though. Science has discovered a reason.
Totally. Yes, and it has to do with the fact that the skin under your eyes is very thin, and I want to say it's something about hormones in your brain when you get tired that causes like side effects of like bringing veins to the surface under your eyes and making them appear darker, something like that. But don't quote me on that.
I mean, when in doubt, blame hormones is a safe bet when it comes to stupid things that the human body does. But yeah, it's same, Zool. I've, like, my entire life that I've been old enough to look in a mirror and be like, why do I look that way? I've had dark circles under my eyes. Like, it's just... And
unfortunately, looking it up, I'm trying to do a quick look up, but it's like, it's all people trying to sell you a product that fixes the problem. And so there's no actual, like, the scientific evidence is shockingly hard to find without a deeper Google search and a look into an actual scientific, like, video or paper.
Yeah. I hate looking at problems that are just rife with cures like that. It's like, I just want basic facts, man. Right.
I don't need your cream that solves the blood flow issue that you think somebody has. Yeah, no, that's not.
So. So you're ready for me to tell you a little bit about the names?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I looked up the names of the Boarderlanders for this in Origins, because I thought, we've got a new resource, and these names have come up before, but we haven't talked about them in a while. So, Isar of Shinar, apparently Elisar and Shinar were both kingdoms mentioned in the Book of Genesis. So Isar of Shinar is Elisar and Shinar, two neighbor kingdoms. So that's kind of fun.
Reminds me a little bit of Shinovar from Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive. It's a kingdom there as well, which is sort of a very biblical, that's where people started on his world. So. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
Book of Genesis is pretty starting point of the story kind of vibes, for sure. Moving down, we've got Ethaniel of Kandor, and her name comes from Ethaniel, which means God-given strength, which does fit her character. She is a very strong person.
I always, and I know this is probably wrong, but I always connect her with Menethandrel, right?
Yeah, it's got that vibe to it, yeah. And maybe it does in world, but according to Origins, it comes from this Greek name,
totally unrelated, right? Yeah, totally unrelated. So there's just a coincidence. I did notice he did that. There are some times when Jordan does that, where he takes two words with very different origins, tweaks them both, and ends up with two words that are very similar but have two very different sources. But he twists them sort of towards each other and makes the alterations, and you're like, oh, are those two? No, okay.
You know what? It's kind of like when you're listening to like a singer-songwriter or like a jam band artist, and like you can recognize them because you're familiar with the chord progressions that they use. And you're just like, oh yeah, no, I know them. I recognize that series of chord progressions. Like, even though I don't know the song per se, like, I know who that is. Like, Jordan has a certain kind of chord progression he likes in his fantasy names.
Yep, totally. And we played that game, which was fantasy name medication, or like Middle East
Town
country.
in Yugoslavia.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah. And I don't. It's rare that I've had a problem picking out the Robert Jordan names. Sometimes I don't know whether it's a medication or a random town, but I almost always am like, yeah, that's a Robert Jordan name.
Yeah, I'm bad at that game. I'm really bad at that game. They all sound like all three categories. My brain is awful at that game.
Medication is usually a pretty safe guess because usually I know the name.
Sure. Yeah. The names that they picked at WalkCon were hard, though.
They were hard.
I was so enjoying being around people who could stump me. Like, it was the best. Okay, moving on with another name. We've got Paytar of Arafel, I didn't find anything for Paytar, but Arafel was the king of the aforementioned Shinar, or Shinar.
Got it.
So we've got a lot of Genesis happening in this. And then the last name we've got is Tenobia of Saldaea, who you'd think there wouldn't be more cool shit to learn about. But she maybe fairly obviously comes from Zenobia, who was a 3rd century queen of the Palmyrene Empire, which I had never heard of. And so I had to go look up what the Palmyrene Empire was, and it was a short-lived breakaway state in the 3rd century from the Roman Empire, and it stretched from Turkey a little bit east into Asia and all the way down through like what we think of as the Middle East and into Egypt. So yeah, I ended up doing a geography lesson attempting to figure out what was up with Tenobia. So you're welcome.
And she's also Fael's cousin.
Yes, she is Fael's cousin. And she's very interested in meeting our dear Uncle Davram.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, that's all I got for the names.
One thing I want to talk about here, Tenobia calls Aviendha a black-eyed Aiel.
Oh, yes.
And she says, my eyes aren't black. I never saw black eyes except on a peddler until I crossed the dragon wall, right? Because most Aiel have green, blue, light eyes.
Yeah.
Why are they called black-eyed Aiel? What is the source of that slur when most of them have extremely bright eyes? I never even thought about that before. That seems almost counterintuitive.
I feel like they started with the black veils, and somehow that became tangled and confused with black souls and black-eyed devils and negative imagery and trips of the tongue, and somehow we've ended up with black-eyed. And I hate it, but like I feel like that literally happened in my brain as I was like smashing my way through the series. So like I can forgive the in-world thing, but like I feel like that's a tenuous argument. So chat's agreeing with me, so maybe it's not so tenuous.
There's also a warrior society called the Black Eyes.
Oh, also that. Maybe the Black Eyes were a particularly notable kind of Aiel and became just a stand-in for all the Aiel, at least for Saldaeans, for Tenobia's understanding. Sayadun, I believe, are the Black Eyes. I think. Also, there's the part where your pupils do dilate when you're super aroused by anything, including battle. That's a thing. Particularly if they, like, go berserker with mushrooms. Like mythical Vikings.
Yeah, Zool, you're 100% correct with the spelling and everything.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that I feel like the best explanation is that the Sayadun yelled a bunch about how they were the Black Eyes and they were gonna fuck these people up, and that kind of...
And that's just an old stereotype left over from the Aiel War 20 years ago?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at the weird stereotypes that the United States has around its indigenous populations, you know? Like, maybe it's that, but just much more fresh. But nice work to Zool for just calling out Sayadun.
The old... Oh, yeah, I just know the old tongue translation of that.
Yeah, just knows the old tongue. Like, thank you for being here. We appreciate you.
So she picks up the cup, and you know, at first I thought and Aviendha gets super alarmed that she's picking up this wine cup. And I was like, are they worried about poison? It doesn't seem like the Boarderlanders will poison. It's like, no, she's pregnant and she picked up a wine cup. They're worried about her diet. Again, the micromanaging, like what she's going to drink and eat. That took me a while to figure that one out, where I was looking at that being like, what's with this panic? Don't get it.
Yeah. Jordan was making sure that he did not communicate that drinking during pregnancy was okay ever at all. He was making very, very sure that was not a thing that he was saying. And it makes sense in this world that despite all of the loss of medicine and loss of knowledge that they've had, they still have basic germ theory, and they still know that drinking and pregnancy don't mix. Like, that makes sense to me in world. But also Jordan was probably not going to be allowed to depict a woman drinking during pregnancy in his books. Not without being like, it's a period piece.
I don't know. I'm not sure anybody's...
Maybe. She's an adult.
Yeah.
So. But it makes sense to me that in this world, they still have certain reasonable prohibitions on what pregnant women should do from a time when actual medicine existed.
The issue is you can't separate the no drinking alcohol from the you have to drink goat's milk wisdom, right? So, like, that's where some of this is accurate, but some of it's just off the wall craziness. And are you going to experiment, or are you going to drink that goat's milk?
Which is honestly the state of most medicine today. Not just pregnancy-related medicine. That's still the state of most medicine. A
lot of medicine, yeah. I mean, there are peer-reviewed double-blind studies that help us eliminate some of the more wackery stuff that's out there. But especially in psychology, like, I feel like we're really just at the, like, well, if you think it works stage of...
Well, and I mean, basically everything, because not enough people have been included in studies.
Well,
but
yeah.
Like,
you know what? They all work for me for some reason. All the studies seem to apply to my demographic for some reason. Just fine.
Did you know that women were not included in autism studies until 1993?
Well, why? Autism is exactly the same in men and women, isn't it? Right? Besides, women aren't hyperactive, so they can't get autism or ADHD or whatever you want to talk about.
But even setting all of that aside, just like a lot of Western medicine around, like, how should you eat? Period.
Sure,
Much less in your pregnancy. Like, there's a lot of extreme stuff we've figured out, like how to keep people's hearts from exploding. But, like, how should you just exist in a let food be thy medicine kind of way? Like,
right. The study that comes out every other week that says alcohol is good / not good for you in moderation. Yeah, or coffee.
Or honey.
Yeah.
Or this weird new refined food that will absolutely prevent you from getting all the bad things that come from food we've been eating for thousands upon thousands of years.
So there's just there's more politics between Elayne and these Boarderlanders, where she's doing her whole attack thing, which is basically pushing them on stuff and making them uncertain and trying to push them off balance to get what she wants, right?
Both verbally and physically.
Yes.
She's manipulating them on every level she can because attack.
And her goal is to get them to come into Andor.
Yes, she wants to lead them by the nose. That's why she physically leads them to walk around her chair, and that's so she can physically lead them into Andor, and thus physically lead people to support her, because the divine right of queens is important.
I do think it's funny, though, that Petar, who is not, maybe was attractive at one point, but isn't anymore, still has, like, such a sexy voice that she's like, I'm glad I can see the wrinkles on his face, or I'd be jumping his bones. He must just have... He has a voice for podcasts. Let's put it that way. Yeah, he's got a little bit of that ASMR, deep rumble, silky smooth, seduce you over the phone type voice.
Right. Yeah. No, he's got the golden pipes for sure. There's some fun back and forth with the Boarderlanders themselves. I mean, watching how Petar comes and doesn't sit down at first and then does sit down reflects how he's coming into accord with what Elayne wants. But there's also this really fun thing between Atheniel and Tenobia, where Atheniel is, like, muttering about how she wants to get this girl married off, because we saw in her perspective, right, she was thinking about that. And Elayne overhears this comment and is like, that's just a non sequitur. Why is it in the plot? But we're kind of over here giggling, like Atheniel's still, like, worrying over this whole how to get Tenobia married. Also, she kind of Tenobia wants her to marry her uncle, and it's kind of cool. And, like, there's just a quick little callback to that.
I forgot about that whole POV where she was thinking about that, yeah. But the whole, Tenobia needs to get married, and that's the only thing that's going to settle her down, because she is nuts. And doesn't Tenobia end up dying in the last battle in a charge? Yep.
I believe Atheniel does marry the uncle, and I don't know if they survive. But yes, Tenobia and her guard go down in the battle. And then after that, Davram and Dira go down after Tenobia. So the line of succession actively passes to Fael through the entire chain of command.
And to Perrin.
Oh, and to Perrin, yes. So yeah, then they finally quit dicking around and having physical comedy and just say plainly what they want. And that's pleasant.
Mm-hmm. And then Elayne lies to them, and lies to them, and lies to them.
She's not lying. She's an Aes Sedai. Yeah, she gets bluntly devious.
Mm-hmm. So things she lies about. They ask her if she's for the rebels or for the tower, and she uses Marililla to sort of intervene. Marilla's like, that's none of your business, and Elayne never answers.
Which I would say is not a lie. That is an evasion. That's just a really
Lying
clever
through
evasion.
omission.
She doesn't lie. She literally just doesn't answer.
Well,
like, that's
fair.
not a lie. Like, Tenobia says that's none of your damn business, and Elayne refuses to answer. Like, that, I would say that is just simply refusing to answer. Nobody has any idea what she means by that.
She actively misleads them about where Rand is.
Yes, she does.
With all sorts of justifications in her own head. I cannot tell you exactly where he is.
Which is true because she can't trust them enough. She says, I cannot tell you, because in her heart of hearts, she can't trust them enough, which means she has free license to lie. I'm like, I don't know if the 3 oaths would allow that much bendiness, Elayne.
The exactly is doing a lot of work there, right? Like, I can't tell you exactly where I am right now because, my atoms are shifting around, right? So, sorry.
Right, we're orbiting around the center of the Milky Way.
Right,
it's like a whole thing.
Right, it's a whole thing. I can't tell you exactly where I am. It feels like that level of like, yeah, she knows where he is. Pretty much exactly. Like, she could pinpoint him pretty easily. Based on direction and
she
distance.
could find him if she went looking for him pretty easily. I don't think she knows exactly where he is. But if she were to start going that direction, it would be very easy for her to find him.
Okay, so help me with the geography of this. She says, I promise you'll be marching towards the Dragon Reborn. And then she says, to begin with, they would be at any rate. Is that because he's going to move? Is that because, I don't understand why it's only to begin with and not...
I think it's because he was jumping around a whole bunch and he's now settled down for a few days in one spot. And she's saying, if you start going towards that place where he's been settled for a few days, he'll probably be there long enough that you will technically be heading towards him. And then he'll jump away again because clearly he's going to jump away again at some point. And then you're going to be right back where you started. That's how I interpreted it. And also, I'm assuming that means that the direction he's in is towards Andor, so that they will go towards Andor if they start going towards him.
Well, and if you draw a straight line from where they are on the border down to where he is in Farmatting, then you should see that is southward by all means, right?
I'm going to just pop over to my map real quick.
Okay.
So Farmatting is southeast of Andor, and they're in Bramewood. Where is Bramewood?
I mean, not far from Camelin.
Oh, there it is. There it is. It's right above the notation for Camelin.
Mm-hmm.
So if they came down south, she's asking them. So basically, Camelin is due north of Farmatting, and she's meeting them on the northern border and saying, you should head south into my country because you will be pointed at Rand for the moment, because it's literally, Farmatting's due south.
That's just, okay, cool. So
there you go. Geography.
It's not like they're going to have to turn and go around something and that's going to send them away from him or anything. It's that he's probably going to move.
Yep. And then, they're like, hey, are you actually the daughter heir right now, trying to use us for politics? And she's like,
Yeah, she's like, I expect it to be bloodless, and I hope that you do the same. Meanwhile, they're like, so you're using us, right? And she's like, I expect it to be bloodless, and I expect you to do the same.
Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, oh, you're being clever for a Southlander. I guess we'll allow ourselves to be used by you because we need to go on a suicide mission to slap the Dragon Reborn. So what does it matter if we help you with your political thing? It all feels like they see whatever she's doing as being very petty and beneath them, and they don't really care as long as they won't get harmed by it. They don't really give a shit if she gains the throne or not. They could care less.
Well, yeah, why? They're Boarderlanders. What do they care?
Well, and they're very preoccupied with finding Rand because they think it's going to go badly. That's the impression I got. They just seem very reluctant to find him.
Queen Tenobia is willing to go along with this as long as she meets her uncle Davram Bashir. I'm just trying to track down exactly where in his timeline he is, right? Because he just went and fought the Shan Chan, and he's back from that with Rand, right?
Rand leaves him behind after the palace gets attacked.
Okay.
He is not part of Rand's retinue as he does his hop, skip, and a jump.
But isn't the palace being attacked not in Camelin, but in Cairhien?
Cairhien, yeah. So Rand, I think, sends... I don't know where they go, but I know that he doesn't take them with him. I don't even know when they meet up again. I have no idea where Bashir is at this point. He is not with Rand. That's the only thing I'm sure of.
So the next time we run into Bashir is in the Crossroads of Twilight prologue, where he's with Bael surveying the armies laying siege to Camelin.
Okay, so when was the last time we saw him?
The Path of Daggers, chapter 24, when he tackles Rand, when the Kalimdor is out of control.
Yeah, so I think what happens is that Rand, the palace gets attacked, and he sends Bashir off to do stuff, and stuff happens, which ends up with him hanging out with Bael, overlooking the siege of Camelin. I don't remember any of the specifics of what possibly happens between here and there.
Give me a second.
Presumably training the Legion of the Dragon. Training somebody. Bael is an Aiel chief, the tallest man Rand's ever seen.
Right.
Married to Elayne.
So what forces are Bashir and Bael keeping Rand's forces? Are Rand's forces hanging out in Camelin?
They were holding Camelin. And Elayne showed up and tore down all of Rand's banners and expelled the Aiel from the city. And I believe expelled the Saldaeans. I believe that they were part of her showing up and saying, shoo, get out of here, foreign force.
Okay, so they're just outside of Camelin now, observing
Waiting
the siege
for
someone to come
show
get
up
them.
and tell them to do stuff.
Yeah, that's a
I
whole
think.
army that's just like hanging out there, like.
But she can't use them because that screws with the politics of her succession, and Rand can't use them because he's trying to be sneaky and cleanse the source. So they just do a siege on nothing for no reason and try not to die of dysentery for like months? Weeks at least.
Yeah, there's this giant gap between the end of the Path of Daggers and Crossroads of Twilight, where we just don't hear from any of these forces. Bael, Bashir, a bunch of Rand's allies are just sort of left in the lurch, and apparently they go from what looks like Cairhien to Camelin over the course of that period of time.
Guess it's March.
Yeah. I don't have a good way to construct that timeline for those characters.
Huh.
Nor what forces they have with them. But it feels like it's the remnants of the forces that attacked the Seanchan.
Yes, it would have to be.
But then we have this whole different force that was in Camelin that got forced out when Elayne showed up.
Well, Rand had a bit of a peacekeeping force, at least of Aiel, there, because he was trying to hold it for her. I think the Saldaeans were there as well. I don't know if they were actually in Cairhien.
But I'd love some help if someone can reconstruct the timeline of where Bashir is during this book and how he gets to just outside of Camelin. Because I don't think she's lying about that. He is there.
Oh, absolutely.
And later in Crossroads of Twilight, we see him with forces. Mm-hmm. But what forces?
Some Saldaean, some Aiel. They're bonding over being abandoned at this point.
Rand went to buy a pack of smokes and he never came back.
Yeah, it's just the timeline's getting funky, and Jordan may have lost an army or two between the cracks.
Yeah, what's an army or two between authors?
Yeah. So yeah, Elayne gets this big old promise out of them, and then they're like, all right, you're into the bargain. And she's like, vague bullshit. That's what I'm giving you.
Right. A search in Murandy will be profitable, and then she thinks in her head, for me? Oh, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. That's the most bullshit, like,
bullshit. Total
bullshit. But, you know, if you think about where they are in Camelin, you know, both Murandy and Farmatting are south, but Farmatting is going to be to your east, and Murandy is going to be to your west.
Yes.
And so she's sort of pointing them, yes, south is towards both of those, but she's really pointing them in the wrong direction to find Rand.
Yeah, well, it's one of those, like, if you're off by a few angles at the beginning, you're off by hundreds of miles at the end.
Right.
Kind of things.
And the difference between southwest and southeast, right? Like, those are different directions.
Actually, I have a geography degree and you're wrong. They're the same direction.
Only in non-Euclidean space, okay?
Exactly. Yeah. But, I mean, she figures that if she sends them south, by the time that they get out of Andor, Rand will have moved around enough times, maybe resurfaced. They'll have a better idea of where they're going.
I mean, really what the Borderlanders need to do is find a place where they can hole up and wait for Rand to come to them.
Honestly, running around after him is like, he moves at the speed of gateways, you move at the speed of marching armies. Like, this is, you're never going to catch him. Just sit somewhere that can handle you for months and just be like, please, come, we've taken a number. We just take a number. Just take a number. The Sea Folk did it. They just parked in the harbor and they said, we're not leaving until we can talk to him. And
that worked out real well for them.
Well, yeah, there is that.
So it's their own issues, though.
Yeah, well, in fairness, if they were more efficient about finding him, then he would have found him too soon, and that would have been bad. So, as we said, Elayne is saving the world with this east-west distinction.
And here is why I think the armies are actually attacking, not because of Melar.
Before we leave, you think the reason that they're attacking happens?
Right. No, there's a sentence here that says, Egwene had moved from Urundi today, taking away the army that hailed Erethel, Rayshar, and the other nobles in the south. So what happens is, it's the sudden change has nothing to do with Melar. It's the fact that this is the day that Egwene teleports to the White Tower, and then suddenly there's no army between the rebels and Andor, and that's why they start moving on Andor. So it has everything to do with Elayne or Egwene moving, and nothing to do with. I mean, I don't think anything to do with Melar.
I think you're totally right. Which means that Elayne shouldn't have been as surprised by the news as
she really shouldn't have been.
Was,
yeah,
because she had just talked with Egwene about the timing. She's very aware of that timing.
Maybe that's why she's in such a rush to go make this deal with the Borderlanders. That's why it's all this rush. I know there's no army protecting my southern flank anymore. So I need to get the Borderlanders pointed at Murundi because I don't have Egwene's Tarvalin army and Gareth Bryn standing between me and the rebels.
Right, and that's part of why the pattern made it happen faster than she expected, because, like, she barely manages to pull this off in time with the time she's given, with this lucky timing of how quickly Marilyn found them and all of that.
Oh, right, totally.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. Melar is just running around setting shit on fire. He's not doing anything more complicated than that.
Chaos demon. No, that right there, I think, helps pull a lot of this chapter together for me. Is this understanding that this is all happening. And also, something we talk about, like, this is and we talked about that in the last chapter. This is a flashback scene. We're going back in time to literally, the end. This is the day before the end of the last book, or the day after the end of the last book.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to the end of Winter's Heart, and we literally have our 24 hours out. From the beginning of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why we did not blend this chapter with the last chapter. There's a lot to unpack here. Before she takes off, she probes a little bit about the Aes Sedai question. Like, hey, have you met many Aes Sedai? And they're like, there are Aes Sedai everywhere.
That's a very Aes Sedai answer for you to give, right? Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, you're giving us some vague jerk around answer about Rand. We're going to give you some vague jerk around answers about these Aes Sedai.
Yeah, it's very cloak and dagger, despite the fact that everyone is, quote unquote, being blunt and straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nah.
It still is very blunt and straightforward about very specific things, but very, very obsequious about many other facts.
Yeah, the obfuscation is coming hard and thick.
Mm-hmm.
But Elayne's like, welp, best be getting on out of here.
She slaps her legs and stands up. Yep. Well.
Yeah, she does the Midwest goodbye, slap your legs, stand up thing. Yep. And she makes very sure that there's no chance that anyone from the camp will see the weave of the gateway get woven, because she doesn't want to give that technology away.
Right, because she knows there are Aes Sedai in the camp. Aes Sedai?
Aes
Sedai?
Is it like attorneys general?
Yeah.
Even though, as we discussed, it's completely illogical for her to be the one making this gateway, that's her motivation, and it's important because gateways are midway through their propagation through all the channelers. Some people have it, some people don't, and she's trying to slow it down as much as she can within her enemies. Not within her allies. She's spreading it around to all her allies. We talked about that last chapter, but she wants to keep it from her enemies in the same spirit.
And if the Borderlanders get gateways from her, it will completely defeat the purpose of her saying you need to ride south, because then they would just skip over all of that. They just gateway to their destination, and they'd be like, so where's Rand? And they'd be like, not here. And they'd be like, you lied. She's not in Murandy. And then that would be... And they wouldn't ride south, and I mean, it would completely defeat the purpose of this trip if they got gateways.
That's true. Even without them being her enemies, it ruins their strategic advantage for her. Yeah. So yeah, she weaves a gateway. She stares at it because she's exhausted. She rides into a fugue, gets carried into the palace.
I did have to ask, though, there's these, I'd almost call them omens. As she's riding through the forest, a trotting white fox appeared for an instant and was gone. A dark hawk suddenly plummeted out of the sky, and a thin squeal broke the air and ended suddenly. I just reading that and going, Tuon would absolutely have a field day with a white fox and a dark hawk suddenly attacking an animal.
You're right. That is very, very rich for Seanchan omen interpretation. What might it mean? So who's the white fox and who is the dark hawk? They're not related animals. They're not interacting.
Let's see. I mean, you got the trotting white fox, which could be like Rand appearing and disappearing, right?
Yeah, she's
like
there for an instant and then gone.
Right. And then being seek. The dark hawk could be the sea folk, or not sea, the Borderlanders who are like, you know, trying to attack. Or you could make something about the Arafelans, or not the Arafelans, the
Andorans? Aes Sedai?
Aramilla.
Ah, the Aramilla.
Not Arafellan.
The Aramillans.
The Aramillans of the world, right? And the rebels. And how, like, they're, you know, maybe she's the hawk that's going to come down on them. And I don't know. I don't have a good way to bring that together.
I think maybe it's all confusing and she's overwhelmed by a lot of different things. But you're right. Tuon would be able to make a far more eloquent breakdown.
Totally. Well, she's got the whole mythology behind it.
Right. She knows all the everythings.
Mm-hmm. She doesn't use the Angreal. She's so tired she forgets to use the Angreal she brought with her for that purpose, right? Which would have made making the gateway much easier, or made it much bigger, would have taken much less of a toll on her, right? This whole, you're so tired, you're making mistakes, which is making you more tired.
Yeah. You shouldn't be driving, Elayne. I mean, we...
Yeah. Give me your license. Come on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Your keys, more like.
Right. Or give them to Bella, right?
Yes. And yeah, so she's getting carried up into the palace when Master Nori runs up all aflutter.
Mm-hmm. Forgive me, but tomorrow will not do. Love Master Nori.
It's like, oh dear.
Yeah. But yeah, basically there are 4 small armies approaching Camelin from the east.
They'll be here instead of a week.
20,000 men, perhaps 30.
Which is a huge army compared to even like 5 years ago. This is a huge amount of army.
Giant
They're
army.
small armies by modern standards, but not by literally like last quarter that he did his reviews. Like, and he's upset. He's running his hands through his hair. He's babbling. He's trying to offer paper proof. Like, he is all kinds of upset about what's happening because he just got news right after she left. So he's been running around like freaking out for however many hours she was gone. He is worked up.
The only question I have here is she's like, the snow and mud should have held them. And I'm wondering how did this army get there that quickly?
I just don't know. Maybe they were better provisioned than Elayne's intelligence had. Maybe I don't know. I don't feel like we ever get a good villain POV that explains really what's happening.
Yeah, we get some of it in Crossroads of Twilight. I feel like we get like Davram's POV. No, it's not from their POV, but like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've got nothing. I keep looking at the little bits, trying to see if there's any clues, but no, I've got nothing.
Well, if there's anything to find, we will find it when we get there in Crossroads.
So basically, Elayne knows they're in for a siege, and she prepares for it, right?
Just some basic how you prep for sieges stuff, because it's going to be brutal. Sieges are awful and terrible. It did not matter, Elayne supposed. Whoever it was, they were coming, and now. At first light, Master Nori, I want you to begin buying all the foodstuffs you can find outside the walls and get it brought in. Birgitte, have the bannerman announcing the signing bounty add that mercenaries have 4 days to sign with the guards or they must leave the city. And have announcements made to the people, too, Master Nori. Whoever wants to leave before the siege begins should go now. It will cut down the number of mouths we have to feed, and might lead a few more men to enlist in the guards. Pushing away from Birgitte's support, she strode along the hallway, heading for her apartments. The others were forced to follow. Mirel, let the kinswomen know, and the Atha on Mier. They may want to leave before it begins, too. Maps, Birgitte. Have the good maps brought to my apartments. And another thing, Master Nori. There was no time for sleep, no time for weariness. She had a city to defend. This is going to be great for her pregnancy.
Oh, yeah, totally. No sleep, bad nutrition, stress. Those are all things that you want to have while pregnant.
Yeah, no, the stress of defending a city is actually recommended for all pregnant women. Mm-hmm. That amount of cortisol is really healthy for developing brains. All right, I can't do this anymore. This is awful.
Yeah. And the fact that she's pregnant with twins, so, eating for 3, as they say.
Yeah. She's stressed about defending them because they're going to be the heirs to the Andorran throne as well as the Dragon Reborn. She's stressed about defending the city, so she has a throne, and she's about to become traumatized by goat's milk.
But none of it matters because she has the prophecy from men that they'll be born healthy, so she can throw herself into any danger. And this is the beginning of that, right? This whole, I don't know that she's necessarily actively thought about it, but the fact that she goes in there with nothing but her, Birgitte and Aviendha by her side when she's gotten the prophecy. She doesn't explicitly say, I'm going to survive this because my babies will. But maybe that gave her the confidence.
Yeah, she doesn't cite the prophecy at this point to defend her choices, which she is going to be notorious for doing later. I kind of always chalk this one up as more of just the pregnancy brain makes her make silly decisions, especially because we saw Rand get so punch drunk before. I kind of just assumed she was pregnancy punch drunk. But yeah, I mean, she does have that information about the prophecy. There's no reason it can't be subconsciously affecting her in a way that she will be consciously identifying in the future. Yeah. Yeah.
Just a thought. Yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, oh God, it's, yeah, her Evel Knievel approach to her plot is it's a good time.
All right.
Any other thoughts?
No, not really. I think that was pretty much it. I had some thoughts about some of the other reveals that happened in the past week. Just want to say thanks for sticking with us despite the break we took with pushing out episodes. There's a lot of holidays and a lot of surgery going on, so the combination made it tough.
Yeah, it's been a saga, but thank you again so much for sticking with us and supporting us and following and engaging with our social media. I can see Timber is extremely ready for you to be done.
Oh, yeah, because I went on a trip and I got home and I got to say hi to him, but I didn't get a chance to really play with him or pet him, and I can tell he's just been like, Dad, why are you ignoring me? You've been gone for 4 days. What's going on?
Ah, poor puppy. But yeah, I think we can probably call it there, and we will see you all again on the next one, which is a double header. Next week is 2 chapters.
Next week is a double header. Ooh, excellent. So wait, how many episodes does that leave us for the rest of this book?
Not very many. Rest of February. It's the rest of January and February, but we are going to open March with a new book if we stay on our schedule.
So yeah, 6 more episodes, and then of course the tangents, and then the cleansing is still at the end there. So.
Oh right, yeah, because we need to plot that out quickly.
Yes, we do.
We don't have very many weeks between now and then. So here we are, week 2 of being back to recording for 2023.
How do we do this again?
We open the book and we complain about how bad it is, and people give us money. It's a very confusing system.
I'm pretty sure we start off saying how good it was. So
did we once like these books? I feel like all we do is complain about them.
The slog is pretty sloggy. I'll admit that. We're in it deep.
Like I've been on the fence about the slog for a couple of years. Like, no, the slog's a matter of perspective, and the slog doesn't exist for some people, and blah blah blah. And doing this, I'm like, I don't know, man. I feel like the slog exists. I feel like I'm in a slog right now. Like, you guys are watching it happen in real time, how much this slows down. And like, I think I'm decided the slog is real.
I've always thought the slog is real. Like, it is a distinct change in pace and writing. Now, I don't necessarily think it's worse, but it's definitely a different style. And yeah, you know, and of course there's people who are like, well, you're doing it 1 chapter a week. Of course it feels slow. But yeah, we've been doing the whole series like that. And sometimes it feels like, wow, so much has happened. I can't believe we were only talking about this 3 weeks ago. Whereas now I'm like, oh my God, are we still talking about Elayne being pregnant?
Yeah.
And
like, we're at the beginning.
We have a lot more to go.
This is spoiler people being like, oh, right, here we go. Like, we have all of Crossroads.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I guess we're not at the beginning. We're like in the middle. Mm-hmm. Because I guess in many ways, Path of Daggers kind of starts it, but not really. This is it. Winter's Heart and Crossroads of Twilight are just. Yeah, we're just gonna speed run Crossroads.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be
speed running that book.
We're gonna see how many chapters we can combine in a single episode. that is going to be see if we can like win the challenge on that one in Crossroads, because
oh my God, right? Just be like, this chapter takes 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. This chapter takes 8 minutes.
There are some short chapters in Crossroads as well. There are some really short chapters where not a lot happens or something repeats. So
yeah. Especially when we frame it. Ooh, maybe we put a bunch of chapters as small tangents onto the cleansing chapter. We're just like, nah, bin that one with the cleansing. And then when we go through the cleansing, we just mention, and here's where chapter 18 of Crossroads happens, or whatever.
Okay, you were brilliant. I need to figure out how to do this off recording. But I love the idea of taking the last chapter of Winter's Heart, breaking up into scenes and doing a scene from the last chapter and pairing that with one of the chapter of Crossroads, rather than just moving it from the end of one book to the middle of the next. Actually chop it up into bits, and we splice the entire last chapter of Winter's Heart through Knife of Dreams the way it would have been if it had been actually edited into something that was like significant.
Crossroads, but yes, we will need a murder board. There will be a spreadsheet.
We'll need some red string.
Yeah, yep. Spreadsheets. But we should do that, because that was a very out of my head randomly. I did not think about that, so I think it must be brilliant.
But I think that's better, because I've been mulling over this. Like, I know there's something I want to do with the cleansing and to somehow get us through Knife of Dreams. That's why I was thinking about delaying it, and why I've been harping on doing it like in time. But I really like the idea of breaking it up, because it is a pretty long chapter.
It is. With very distinct scenes and sub-chapters, basically.
Because we just did that reading with Michael Kramer and Kate Redding at SpoilerCon, where they read scenes from that. And there's a lot of cuts, there's a lot of POV switches, and so you take one POV, you do a Crossroads of Twilight chapter, and we just need to match those up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's going to take some time, but that would be worth it, because that's so what Spoilers is about, is that kind of alignment.
Well, an Encyclopedia Watt has all of the POVs like in order, so we could just assign chapters to those.
So most of the work's already been done.
Yeah, of course it's already done. This is the Wheel of Time fandom. All the work's always been done.
That's fair. That's fair. How dare I underestimate us?
It's so nice, actually, that a lot of the work has been done there. Although the tedium, someone has been like, yeah, I can sit down for 12 hours and reread the series and mark off every POV.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking, like, I could do that. So, yeah, we are those people. But fortunately, someone else has already done that, and I can stand on the shoulders of giants.
Right. We don't have to.
And it'll be great. Yeah, no, that's how we're going to handle it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we have it on recording, so we don't even have to write it down right now. It's all recorded, and we can shelve that idea, back burner it, and deal with it. Not right now.
I do want to just check and see. 1, 2, 3. There's 20 POVs.
20 POVs.
So that's more than enough to get us probably up to the point in Crossroads of Twilight where they stop talking about the cleansing, because that's about halfway through the book.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Well, I should say 20 POV switches, right? Obviously, I think some like multiple of those are like Codswain or something like that. But
yeah, there's several repeat characters, but times when it cuts also represent time jumps. Mm-hmm. Every time that there's one of those POV cuts represents minutes to hours. So that'll be a great time for us to, put in perspectives of what was happening around the world at that time. Well, around the continent, but that is the entire world as it matters for the plot. So, let's just be Randland centric.
Is there no one in Shanchan who's like, what is that thing I sense off in the far distance?
I think there's a mention of all of the Suldam being kind of jumpy at one point.
But that's in Randland. That's not in Shanchan.
Yes. That is Invader Shanchan, not Homeland Shanchan.
There was just the 10th anniversary interview on the Dusty Wheel, and one of the things Jordan did say is Rand will be involved in the raising of his kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was other things that were said, too.
Getting over his trauma in a 1 and a 2 and a 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm healed and whole. Yeah, I don't approve.
You don't like Lanfear being
I don't
alive?
like any of the reveals, honestly.
No, none of them? Not a single one?
I'm not a fan of any of them.
Even going back to Nakomi?
It's the least exciting. The fan community had worked out so many better explanations, and the most boring explanation is the one that's true. Like, come on. We had way better ideas.
We did.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I like the books the way I like them, and I don't need, 10-year later secret. I don't care how canon it is. You should have told me 10 years ago.
Right.
It's not canon in my world.
So I'm reserving judgment until I reread the last 3 books with that in mind.
I do like aspects of that other reveal that we're not naming for some reason. In case people haven't heard it, I guess.
Okay. I mean, we're spoilers podcast. What are we trying?
Yeah.
So I didn't really want to spend a half an hour complaining about it, but we can get into it. All right, the Gen Aiel, that Nakomi was Gen Aiel, and that's part of what they were meant to do.
Oh, we're getting into Nakomi. I thought we were getting into Lanfear.
We'll do both. Give me a second.
Okay.
I was just taking off the easy ones, right? I like the fact that she's Gen. I totally called that in episode many times. I said she's Gen. It's very obvious she's Gen. It's obvious they're in the world of dreams. He confirmed that Aviendha was asleep, right, in that thing. I'm totally happy with all that. The fact that she's an avatar of the creator, I didn't feel like that was necessarily in there, but fine, right? That's the whole reason the Gen had to survive, and that's why they were continuing. Where was she? Where are the Gen Aiel? Were they hanging out in Ruidian? Were they hanging out somewhere else in the Aiel Desert? I wish there was a little more about that. Like, how did she survive to modern day? Yeah, but basically she's a dreamwalker. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I just... the Gen still exist? Fuck that, man. Fuck that. No.
The body swap being the exchange of the balefires, I mean, we called that ages ago.
Oh, yeah. To me, that's not even a reveal.
No. That's just something we've known for it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
It
was... Nakomi was fairly easy to suss out. This was just on the floor.
Right.
This was just
I think we've been taking that as fact in this podcast for a long time.
Yeah.
So that didn't feel like much of a reveal.
The pipe,
The pipe we still don't know anything about because nobody knows anything about it.
Yeah, it's just he was close to the patterns. Now he can do shit. Your mileage may vary on the epic. I just, whatever, fine.
And go ahead and headcanon, basically. I like that, though. That's a headcanon you can do whatever you want with, right? If you want to be like he's somehow, a post-dragon person who has special abilities, or, let's say the pipe is a Terangrial, right? Like, whatever. Like, however you want to headcanon that, go for it, right? I think that's the whole point of that lack of reveal. And that brings us down to Lanfear.
Which I am the most annoyed by.
Which is that Lanfear is still alive, manipulated Perrin into thinking he killed her when he actually didn't. And then there's some question, I believe, about how much other manipulation he went through.
Yeah, so I have mixed feelings on this. Because on the one hand, that scene always felt weird.
Yes.
Lanfear's behavior,
yes.
Perrin's behavior, everything about that scene always felt weird. And I was attributing it to Brandon being just as done with Perrin and everything to do with Perrin as the rest of us who are not Perrin stans.
And some of the flaws in his writing that came with Matt and characterization and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I just attributed it to it being Sanderson mishandling the thing. So I do like that this makes the scene's weirdness actually part of his talent as a writer rather than a flaw. I can appreciate that. But I am so fucking done with fake out deaths. I liked her being dead. Yeah. I liked Perrin getting to kill her. I liked her death not being dramatic. Like, I was so content with her dead. And I get that it's been there forever and that Matt Hatch called it, but I still don't like it.
Well, and again, he called it because he read something we didn't read, which was the beta read that had clues in it that never made it to the final version of the story.
If you wanted me to think Lanfear wasn't dead, you should have told me 10 years ago. Like, in my world, this is just some random headcanon. Like, I don't, and like you said, I'll have to see how I truly feel about it when we get to the last 3 books and get to that scene, because maybe I will see it and I will come to appreciate it for what it is. But right now, I am just rolling my eyes so hard about the whole thing.
Zool is correcting me and saying there were no extra clues for Matt. So, okay.
He just loves Lanfear so goddamn much.
I almost feel like that's wish fulfillment on his part, where he's like, no, she can't be dead.
He willed it into existence.
He willed it into existence. He is actually a true dreamwalker, that he went in and was able to will Lanfear's survival into existence. I mean, to me, it's as canon as Bella's surviving, right? Fake out
which
death,
I also reject wholeheartedly because I hate it.
Right.
Because it's wrong. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I like the idea that it's just Matt Hatch being a dreamwalker, just manifesting Lanfear that hard because he's just that enamored with her.
But yeah,
I'm down for that.
Like I said, I'm not angry at it. I'm just I need to do a reread of the books with that in my head to find the clues and the little bits that he dropped and see if there's anything there, or if it's just something he wanted to convey, and certainly it's there in tone, but there's nothing contextually to prove it.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to reserve judgment. I want to judge it so hard, but I'm gonna need to just sit with it, and we'll get there.
So that was
only like a 10-minute rant.
Yeah, current events tangent, right? That's right before we meet the Boarderlanders.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll get deeper into that when it's more relevant, but just
to know,
that's current flavor text of what we're thinking.
We've seen it, we're aware of it. We have opinions.
Yeah.
Shockingly.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?